of accustomed disappointment, and he said, "How am I to meet the white woman? How do I find the white wife?" The question was not entirely rhetorical. I had entered the bar with a Dutch woman, then lost track of her. She had gone to bed, but she had made an impression. I believe the pygmy wanted me to fix him up. "I have an idea," he said. "The Netherlands. The bishop, my teacher, had traveled through all the world. To me, the Netherlands is just imagination. But it is real to me." I'm telling you this here at the outset because this is a book about how people imagine themselves and one another, a book about how we imagine our world. In Rwanda, a year before I met the pygmy, the government had adopted a new policy, according to which everyone in the country's Hutu majority group was called upon to murder everyone in the Tutsi minority. The government, and an astounding number of its subjects, imagined that by exterminating the Tutsi people, they could make the world a better place, and the mass killing had followed. All at once, as it seemed, something we could have only imagined was upon us, and we could still only imagine it. This is what fascinates me most in existence, the peculiar necessity of imagining what is, in fact, real. During the months of killing in 1994, as I followed the news from Rwanda, and later, when I read that the United Nations had decided, for the first time in its history, that it needed to use the word genocide to describe what had happened, I was repeatedly reminded of the moment, near the end of Conrad's Heart of Darkness, when the narrator Marlowe is back in Europe and his aunt, finding him depleted, fusses over his health. "It was not my strength that needed nursing," Marlowe says. "It was my imagination that wanted soothing." I took Marlowe's condition on returning from Africa as my point of departure. I wanted to know how Rwandans understood what had happened in their country and how they were getting on in the aftermath. The word genocide and the images of the nameless and numberless dead left too much to the imagination. I began visiting Rwanda in May of 1995, and I hadn't been there long before I met the pygmy in Gikongoro. I wouldn't have guessed that he was a pygmy. He was nearly 5.5 feet tall. By declaring himself, he seemed to be setting himself apart from the matter of Hutu and Tutsi, and relating to me as a fellow outsider, an observer at large. Still, although he never said a word about the genocide, I came away with the impression that that was the true subject of our exchange. It may have been possible to talk of something else in Rwanda, but I never had a conversation of substance there in which the genocide did not figure, at least quietly, as the point of reference from which all other understandings and misunderstandings stemmed. So the pygmy spoke of Homo sapiens, and I heard a subtext. Pygmies were Rwanda's first inhabitants, a forest people, who were generally looked down upon by Hutu and Tutsi alike as a vestigial aboriginal lot. In the pre-colonial monarchy, pygmies served as court jesters, and because Rwanda's kings were Tutsis, the memory of this ancestral role meant that during the genocide, pygmies were sometimes put to death as royalist tools, while elsewhere they were enlisted by Hutu militias as rapists, to add an extra dash of tribal mockery to the violation of Tutsi women. Quite likely, the Anglican bishop who had instructed the man I met in the guest house bar would have regarded the education of such an original savage as a special trophy challenge to the missionary dogma that we are all God's children. But perhaps the pygmy had learned his lessons too well. Clearly, in his experience, the oneness of humanity was not a fact, but, as he kept saying, a theory, a principle, a proposition of the white priest. He had taken this proposition to heart as an invitation, only to discover that it had forbidding limits. In the name of universalism, he had learned to despise the people in the jungle he came from, and to love himself for disdaining that inheritance. Now he had conceived that a white wife was the missing link required to prove his theory, and the improbability of such a match was sorely testing his faith. I sought to ease the pygmy's frustration by suggesting that even for white men surrounded by white women, even in the Netherlands, finding a sympathetic mate can prove a great challenge. "I am talking about the African," he said. "The African is sick." He managed, for the first time, a twisted little smile. "There is a novel," he went on. "The book is Wuthering Heights. You get me? This is my larger theory. It doesn't matter if you are white or yellow or green or a black African Negro. The concept is Homo sapiens. The European is at an advanced technological stage, and the African is at a stage of technology that is more primitive.